Hello, everybody. This is a Patriots CLNS Roundtable. I'm Alex Barth. He's Mike Petralia. The big story of the weekend, new Miami Dolphins wide receiver Danny Amendola, former Patriot, of course, speaking to the media and lets it slip that he was not a fan of playing for Bill Belichick. He didn't like playing for him, and overall, there were parts of the experience he didn't enjoy. Now, obviously, given the way that the Super Bowl ended, Super Bowl 52 ended, and the issues with Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, which you can check out on our last Patriots Roundtable on the CLNS YouTube page. This is blowing up into quite the story. But, Mike, you're not supposed to like your football coach. I mean, players are not supposed to like their coach. The coach isn't there to be friends. And right. I feel like people are ignoring that fact just to blow smoke up the story's ass, for lack of a better phrase.
Well, right. And I think, certainly Danny Amendola telling Mike Reese of ESPN that Bill Belichick can be an a-hole. Julian Edelman said the same thing. The difference was with Julian Edelman, you get the sense that he respects Bill Belichick more as a father figure type of guy, as head coach, for lack of better analogy there. Whereas with Danny Amendola, that was not the case. Danny Amendola, you could tell there's a personality conflict, a lot like Wes Welker. When I see Danny Amendola talk to Mike Reese in the back of that vehicle on his way up to his event in Merrimack last Friday, I thought of Wes Welker, because that same type of personality conflict is what happened in New England with Wes Welker and what really essentially ended the relationship between Belichick and Welker. And Danny Amendola certainly goes down as one of the biggest clutch receivers in Patriots history. That's not hyperbole. That is legit. Look what he did in Super Bowl 49, and look how he helped the team win Super Bowl 51 in that historic comeback against the Atlanta Falcons. When you take a look at those two games alone, and then the way he performed in the playoffs, Amendola is going to be highly regarded. So he felt, I think, emboldened a little bit to kind of speak his mind and say, hey, there were things that went on that I think maybe the head coach should be more accountable for and more answerable to. That's not Bill Belichick's way, and I think that's the inherent frustration with a lot of players inside that locker room, and that's, I think, what Danny Amendola felt empowered now that he's out of there to really speak for.
And look, it all boils back right to that Malcolm Butler situation, but you mentioned Wes Welker, and that's a good comparison. You go back to the Adalius Thomas situation in the locker room, and that's sort of where that team went sour. But fast forward 5 years, Wes Welker was leading the Free Brady campaign. He was at Gillette every weekend. He was photographed talking to Bill Belichick, having a good time with Belichick. This is a non-story to me because, again, I said at the top of the segment, football players aren't supposed to like their coach. You know what? Coaches are friends with their players. Coaches like Pete Carroll, coaches like Jack Del Rio, good coaches, but they're not Vince Lombardi. They're not Jimmy Johnson. They're not Bill Belichick. This is outside of maybe basketball. I'll give the NBA the exception because the best coaches in the NBA, Steve Kerr, Brad Stevens, obviously, Greg Popovich, they seem to be on good terms with their players. But even baseball, right? John Farrell's problem was that the players liked him too much. You go to hockey, we saw times where we would hear the players were stepping all over Claude Julien. You're not supposed to like your coach. Your coach is your boss. He's there to get the best out of you. And if you're friends, that generally means he's not getting the best out of you, right? The famous Ray Lewis speech. You need to be pissed off for greatness. I think 5 years from now, we'll see Danny Amendola take a different turn, and maybe it's just leaving right now. It's the immediate feelings. But to me, this story, it's because it's coming out after the Malcolm Butler situation that this is a big deal. If the Patriots win the Super Bowl, I bet Amendola says those exact same things, but it's a non-story. Okay. It has to do with the context of Malcolm Butler.
Alex, understand also, this is also about money. And he admitted and said to Mike Reese that I took several pay cuts to try and help us get better. And the understanding was, at least Amendola was apparently, it was suggested to Amendola, we'll take care of you down the road. And he didn't get taken care of. That's why he's bitter. Above everything else, Amendola took pay cut after pay cut after pay cut, and they told him, or he believes they suggested to him, that they would take care of him in the end, and they didn't. And that, my friend, is why Danny Amendola would be so bitter and so frustrated with the situation down in Foxborough. But in the end, he realized, look, it's a business, and they felt that I had passed my window of getting this kind of contract, that meaning 2 years, $12 million from the Miami Dolphins, $6 million guaranteed. They weren't going to offer that and then come anywhere close to offering that. So Amendola had to take, the best offer out there, I think, to do himself some justice.
Well, in a way, isn't that them taking care of him? Think about it. In any other offense, look at him before he came to New England. He wouldn't have been worth that contract the Dolphins gave him. They put him in a spot where he was worth that.
Fair.
They took care of him, just not directly. So I don't think it's necessarily fair to say they didn't take care of him, because they certainly featured him in their offense. They certainly gave him the reps to go out and earn that money. Look, I've said this before. The only player that has played, from what we know, maybe stuff went on behind closed doors, and that's fine. From a public point of view, the only player that's ever had a right to dislike Bill Belichick in my mind is Lawyer Malloy. And he's as pro Patriot Way as anybody at this point. So I think with this Amendola thing, look, yes, he took pay cuts, and he has a right to be upset. He didn't get paid in New England where he wanted to be. And maybe he does have a right to know what happened with Malcolm Butler. But Belichick, I don't think, will ever reveal that. I think there's a better chance we hear it from either another coach or Malcolm Butler himself than from Belichick. And Amendola got his money. It wasn't in New England, but he ultimately got his money. So I think everybody needs to pump. Look, there's plenty of things you can point at this offseason and say maybe things are starting to crumble inside the Patriots locker room. This, to me, is not one of them.
Well, certainly they're not crumbling. I think to go down that road is
trickling down, maybe. Crumbling a strong term, but yes.
There are cracks in the foundation, and the stress that everybody inside that building, including Jonathan Kraft, acknowledged. When you have a great deal of stress, you start to have cracks in foundation, right? Well, I think the same is true with the Patriots locker room. There is definitely stress. And I'm going to tell you, when they walk in to OTAs and when, the football part of the planning for the upcoming season really begins in earnest, there's going to be some tension, I think, between the veterans and the younger players, because I'm sure the veterans are like, we really need to clear the air from what happened at Super Bowl 52. I still think that probably is going to happen before anything else takes place. It's got to, because everything has to be laid out on the table. And I think Bill Belichick not necessarily would normally do that, but I think in this particular case, with so much going on, I think he would want all the cards out on the table in that regard, so everybody is starting in the same place.
Right, and this isn't a normal situation. One more point here before we wrap it up. You mentioned once football gets started, it may start to cause more issues. I'm wondering if once they get started with shells and helmets, if that will ease the tension a little bit, because there's been no football since the Super Bowl. It's been all talk. Maybe once they can get out on the field, once they can get into the meeting rooms, once they can get to the whiteboards, get on the tape, things will return to a sense of normalcy. There'll be that sense of routine that obviously you just don't have during the offseason. But we'll see. That's still a couple months away. And Belichick, Brady, and Kraft all got to survive in that same room, at least until then. I want to remind everybody that this roundtable is brought to you by Hims. Guys, did you know that thanks to science, baldness is now just an option, but you have to act fast? So go to forhims.com. That's FORHIMS.com/reports for a $5 trial of their hair restoration system while supplies last. For more Patriots coverage throughout the offseason, follow at Patriots CLNS on Twitter. And of course, CLNS Media is your home for all things Patriots, Red Sox, Celtics, and Bruins. A lot of playoff runs going on, and Red Sox are off to a nice start as well. But we'll talk about that another roundtable, another time. Until then, for Mike Petraglia, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for watching.